Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
That's the big voice guy. We love hearing him. That means it is Nebraska Preps Postgame, and gosh, it's weird. It's almost like he just said that. That's Jacob Padilla, and I'm old DB, affectionately dubbed JP. Gosh, life is good for you, right? I mean, the resident Phoenix Suns fan, you got a weekend of hoops, nice holiday weekend. I mean, what's life like in the day of JP?
Yeah, about the only downside is the fact that the playoffs are still going on, Suns are still playing, and I had practice last night, so it shows how dedicated I am.
You couldn't quite schedule around that, right? Were you tempted?
I don't have a high school gym like some of my fellow coaches to kind of move things around, and I know somebody else went early in the morning. I'm guessing they kind of used a different gym. The OSA scheduling's a little tough, so I didn't even try. I was like, I'll get home for the fourth quarter, or at least part of it, and see the end. And well, it was already over for the most part by then.
Oh, so you missed Crowder trying to do his best impersonation of, I don't know, Devin Booker or somebody like. He was the only guy that I didn't understand how and why he played like that last night. But I was researching some stats about, when he makes his first shot versus when he doesn't. Michael Severe was talking about that earlier this morning on the show, and I was thinking, gosh, I think there's something to that, right? He was the one guy that was kind of out of pocket.
Well, the interesting thing was, like, he had been on the streaks where 5 games of shooting poorly, then 5 games of shooting the lights out, then 5 games of shooting poorly, and then it seemed in the last game of the series, all right, he's moving into the 5 games of shooting well again, and apparently that phase only lasted 1 game. But hey, he's still out there doing his thing on defense. Like, even when he's not hitting his shots, he'll provide some value, and at some point he's going to have to hit some of the shots, because I know Milwaukee's going to probably adjust their defense, and if anybody's going to have to beat them, they're going to try to make it be guys like Crowder and Bridges.
Yeah, if I hear drop coverage one more time, I may lose my mind. It's like it's become the popular thing to talk about, and I'm just like, okay. After we understand exactly what it is that it is and why they do what they do, then I think we should probably speak on it a little more freely. But just to simply say you're getting killed in pick and roll and can't defend ball screens is a little shallow for me. just a little. I mean, they won a lot of games under Mike Budenholzer without teams assassinating them from the 2-point range like Devin Booker and Chris Paul are capable of doing.
Yeah, and that's the thing about the Suns. They're kind of uniquely equipped to take apart that kind of coverage. And saw them kind of change the lineups. They went small for stretches. Brook Lopez didn't play as much as he did in the previous series, and that's going to kind of be the thing that Budenholzer is going to have to figure out. Like, all right, how can we best do what we do while also not letting the Suns do what they do?
It's interesting, right? Because I feel like the Suns are the gift that keeps on giving. Because I've talked about this a ton, and I think you're well aware of this. They defy, or they go against positionless basketball. Well-defined rules. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. Playing in primarily traditional roles. Say what you will about Crowder stretching you as a 4, but for the most part, their roles are well-defined. Then you get guys like the twin Cams, and I say that in my random car reference, but Cam Johnson, who I'm very familiar with, and Cameron Payne, it's like even when they come off the bench and they do what they do, the roles are so clear-cut. They're a thing of beauty sometimes when you're watching them on offense.
That's the thing, like, about this team, is it's so much fun to watch because of how close it's grown together, how good the chemistry is between all the guys, and even see him swapping in a guy here or there at kind of the tail end of the rotation, and whoever he puts in there goes out there and kind of gives him something. Those guys are ready at the end of the bench too, so hopefully Dario Saric injury isn't too bad, but if they're going to be without him, then it's going to be more Torrey Craig. Maybe Frank Kaminsky gets a shot. I hope it's more Torrey Craig, but we'll kind of see how that plays out. But
I should go back during the regular season, pull up some of your old tweets about Kaminsky. I think one night I remember laughing to myself where I think you said something to the effect of, "Why?" It was that. Is it weird? I remember because I don't know. Very few people are up when I'm up, so it's like I remember that. Well, apparently Frank Kaminsky. Somebody thought that was a good idea.
He hasn't been as bad this year, but the problem was that he was overexposed last year with Ayton's suspension and some of the injuries to Baines, and I just had to watch way too much Frank Kaminsky. So you kind of pick up on every little thing, like blown layup or not hitting the shot or getting toasted in the pick and roll. It's just like, do we not have a better option here? That is kind of the one weakness on the team is that backup 5 position.
It's crazy how it's kind of trickled down into the younger game as well at the high school level and even in college where you can see 2-man games being played. It's very hard. I just watched our 15s play against Factory, and Factory had Jacob Arope, who, for all intents and purposes, was their best offensive option early in that game. He had a quick 6-8 points, and I think he had either 6 out of the 8 or 8 out of the first 10. And it's like, gosh, this guy's going to be a handful. Well, the counter to that was they put him in 2-man games, right? They have a set that they like to do, and it's basically pick and roll or pick and pop. And they ran Will Cooper to the corner, and Jacob is guarding Will. Will has probably 5 threes in the first 9 minutes, and all of a sudden it's like you're in a dilemma. It's just interesting to see how we've talked about it with Rudy Gobert, right? A defensive player of the year. The Suns are built in such a way to take advantage of the 2-man game, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, is Rudy Gobert good? Well, the Suns are uniquely equipped. He's still a really good defensive player. It's just people will find advantages, and they'll figure out what they're willing to give up versus what they're willing to take advantage of.
And the kind of the Gobert topic there and how people kind of hone in on him, the problem with that series wasn't necessarily Gobert. It was the fact that the perimeter guys were getting toasted from the start.
Hey, you allow people to turn the corner, it's a wrap.
Yeah, they were not getting through screens at all. That's part of the drop coverage is the guard has to fight through and get back in the play. Yep. Otherwise, it's going to be a wide open look.
Your only other opportunity is to hedge, and I don't. Get through.
Yeah, it's kind of a team wide problem when you get to a series like that, and that's where the Suns with Ayton have been so good because they can play multiple coverages, and he's comfortable stepping out when he needs to. And if they're in the drop and they give up a couple shots they don't want to, they can adjust, and he'll step out and hedge a little bit. He'll switch if need be and kind of survive against guards as well as almost any big in the league. So that's kind of, you look at the Suns, is they have so many two-way players. Like Mikal Bridges has been quiet for stretches this postseason. Had 14-point games or something like that last night. So, and obviously he's one of the best defenders in the series. So where you look at Milwaukee and they've got PJ Tucker's kind of tough, like for.
I was having flashbacks of Mario Elie last night. Old school 17 shooting threes in the corner with his little push shot. But gosh, if he's going to be wide open, if PJ Tucker can make a 3 or 2, gosh, it changes the way that Milwaukee can play.
And he has to, because he's not a great matchup, I don't think, for Booker or Paul out there. So that means you have to put Middleton and Holiday on those guys. And then you're asking so much of them to be able to do that on offense and defense. It's the problem the Clippers ran into with Paul George. They finally kind of figured some things out with Patrick Beverley, but then Beverley could only guard one of Booker or Paul, and kind of took Booker, and then Paul went to work. So Suns have so many guys that can play both ways. You come in, Cam Johnson, he straight up stopped Giannis in the post, one-on-one one match. Now, you got that guy coming off the bench and hitting 4 threes or whatever.
Sneaky athletic.
Yeah.
I've watched him.
He's giant.
I've watched him quite a long time once he transferred from Pittsburgh to North Carolina, and so very familiar. And you know what I always used to say about Cam? Don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like, as we kind of transition into the high school game, and we saw it this weekend, I think of a guy, just the concept of limiting yourself, like P.J. Davis, right? This weekend, we saw the P.J. Davis that you and I were talking about a little bit, what he could be on the last pod, right? Yeah. Don't settle for three-point shots. You've got a good frame. You can get downhill. There were a few X factors in kind of the upset. I call it an upset a little bit of when the 17s from OSA beat Supreme. Like yeah. I would consider that kind of an upset, and they did a good job of taking advantage of mismatches.
Yes, I think that was the game that most people are looking forward to. I don't think the field was as strong this year in terms of the bracket play, that the teams that were there to play for the championship. OSA ended up beating All Iowa Attack in the championship, and Cole Glasgow had left, so they didn't even have their best player. And speaking of PJ Davis, at 25 in the championship game, it was a sluggish game, and they came out in the second half, and PJ is out of nowhere banged 3 threes right in control, or to right away to give them in control. And then they kind of cruised from there. He finished with 25, 6 of 12 from 3 after really slow start. He was like 3 for 9 or something in the first half.
It's weird, right? With him, it's a shot selection.
Yeah.
If he settles, it's tough. Huh. If he does the dictating, they're a different team.
Funny thing is, though, the one that got him going was a transition step back in the corner, and then the next time he looked off Josh Dix and hit another one. I was like, okay, he's feeling it now.
I got the sense, and I don't know what you thought watching Josh over the weekend, fatigue, or he was laboring quite a bit down the stretch.
And I was talking to one of his high school coaches, and he said, yeah, he gave everything he had in that Supreme game, and I thought he was the best player on the court.
Without question. I completely agree.
It was 11-9, so I didn't get there for the entire game and being able to track the whole thing, but just kind of watching and seeing some of the plays he was making. And that's no slight to anybody on Supreme. Isaac Trout and Jason Green are obviously very talented players. Jay Dawson is unbelievable, as we talked about, but Josh was just playing at another level in that game. And you could tell they weren't happy about the previous game where OSA was shorthanded and Josh was coming off the illness and wasn't himself.
That was the game that we watched together at Kinetic, right?
Yeah, Supreme handled that it wasn't really competitive in the second half. Turn around this game, and Chandler Meeks did not play for Supreme, so they weren't at full strength either. Neither did Kuhn, but they had a lot of talented players, and OSA kind of took control in the second half there, and we're up by 10 or so. Supreme hit some ridiculous shots down the stretch to kind of extend the game, try to give themselves a chance, but OSA did what they needed to do to finish it off, and I think Josh had 20-something. I said just best player on the floor. And the kind of thing I tweeted about this, the more I've watched him the last month and a little bit with OSA, and I think his passing is right up there among his best skills.
Yeah.
Finishing would probably be number one. He's so good, especially with the left hand. But his ability to, off the dribble with one hand, put the ball exactly where it needs to be, right in the shooting pocket, cross court, through traffic, and then make the simple swing pass when it's there. Like, he is such a good passer. His feel for the game is on such a high level.
Excuse me. You remember the word that I used with him a couple of weeks ago that I think typifies his game? He's extremely efficient. He just makes good basketball plays. And the more times he touches the ball, the more good things that are going to happen. And he doesn't – I know. I hear it all the time when people watch him play. They want him to shoot more. Oh, he could be more dominant. He could be more assertive. He understands that, but he's still a guy whose personality lets the game come to him, and he just makes winning plays, right? Yeah. Like, eventually that will come.
And he lets his other teammates, after that Supreme game, kind of the games on Sunday, even the bracket play, I think there was one game where he didn't attempt a shot in the second half because he didn't need to. He's like, all right, you guys go ahead. You go ahead and cook and kind of show what you can do. I'm good over here. Kept moving the ball and didn't play it like you said. He was kind of tired, so you got guys like PJ stepping up, like you mentioned, Hurrdat Bijak. It was good to see him play with them.
Hurrdat is gonna be. We may look back at this at the end of July and talk about his addition to that team. he changes them dramatically.
Yeah, I'm going to look forward to see.
I think he changes them dramatically.
What he looks like in a couple weeks after kind of work off some of the rust and kind of get familiarized with some of those guys and see where they are, kind of the last weekend of the season, and how he's playing. I think it'll be really interesting to see kind of the progress he's able to make. 'Cause I saw him play in June, kind of his first game back against Bellevue West. With West Des Moines Valley, coming off the torn meniscus. So that's why I wasn't able to play in the spring. And yeah, he's especially with Denair Dempsey kind of calling it good, just playing in the spring. They needed somebody. And Root stepped in there and can really shoot the ball in the semis. He had, 23 points on 10 of 14 shooting, 3 of 4 from 3. He's really skilled as a big man, can hit some tough shots. And gives them a little bit of rim protection, just about 6'9" or so back there, which they needed. So he's going to be a key piece for them. You can see that the pick and pop, the 2-man game with him and Josh being really successful. And watching him play, I can kind of see why Nebraska is interested. You can see some Lat Mayen in him. I think he's got a little bit more versatility and potential upside, but
for
he's
sure,
kind of that kind of player.
Especially with putting it on the deck. But you're right. Like overall, like you can kind of see the little bit of the blueprint.
Yeah.
Did it surprise you at all that those OSA teams were able? I think there was one loss between the 3 teams.
I think they swept the weekend.
I thought the 6 teams may. Oh, that's
Price
right.
Sanford hit the game winner.
Yeah, so that was an undefeated weekend.
Yep. 18-0 between the 3 Adidas teams.
That's pretty impressive.
Oh yeah.
We talked about this kind of in passing, maybe about 4 or 5 pods ago. And I just had this conversation again with one of the local area high school coaches. I was sitting there talking with Coach Simons. And the difference in just 8-9 years, 6-7 years, between Nebraska basketball and Iowa basketball. There was a time in which I felt like if one of the Nebraska teams could get a win or two against some of the elite AAU programs in Iowa, it was considered a good weekend. Now we're kind of getting to the point where it's a little lopsided.
Yeah.
And the pendulum has swung towards Nebraska. I'm floored. I didn't. If you'd have asked me 7-8 years ago, would this be the case? I told you you're crazy.
Well, and you're starting to see kids from Iowa come over to play for
which is different. It used to be the other way around. Remember those days?
Yeah, exactly. Barnstormers, they had guys going over there, Ed Chang. And because Price Sanford, that was a big game for the 16s. They back and forth. Kingdom Hoops Elite was the team he came to OSA from.
Yep.
And they had him. Pulled ahead, I think, 3.8 seconds left. And
how about the conception of the play, though? With the inbounds, the local. I mean, that was pretty good.
They inbounded Josiah Dotzler near half court. He pushed it ahead, dished it out to Sanford in the corner, and buried it.
Knew right where he wanted to go with it too. I thought that was, I got to ask Coach King. I said, "Hey, is that the way you drew it up?" But it looked like that was the plan.
Yeah, and. Couldn't have drawn up a better story to have Sanford be the guy that hit that shot. I know he had to be stoked about that one, but
it's super kid too. We were in the concession lines and they didn't have exact change, right? They didn't have any ones, and so I said, "Hey, you know what? Let's just do it this way, and I'll take care of it." And he's looking at me like, "God, why you don't have to be nice to me." In my head, I'm just thinking, you know what? I just appreciate the fact because he's skilled. Sanford he's highly skilled. Don't get me wrong. His number one attribute, he competes.
Yeah.
He flat out competes, and it doesn't matter what's on the clock or what the score is. He plays the same. And I think he has an understanding that if he just does that, 90% of his competitors will wilt. And I think that's how he plays. I think he embraces that. He is a competitive son of a gun.
Yeah. And that's good to have on that team. It'll drive guys like Connor Milliken, who's kind of the same way. He's going to go hard no matter what.
How about his night the night before?
Jeez. It's a very good team. You got any of those guys that are capable of going off for 20, 30 in any game.
And we now have seen kind of the Tate Oddbody. he's kind of starting to get his rhythm.
Yeah, and I think all four of those is Josiah Dotzler, Connor Milliken, Tate Advati, and Price Sanford at different points this weekend were their best player.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? I'm in complete agreement with that.
And that's what we talked about. The key with this team is them playing to the hot hand, them sharing the ball, being okay with, all right, this is his game.
Yeah, because they give up a little bit defensively.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to go out and get stops.
Especially with Brendan Clemens Jr. Not
Still
able to.
nagging knee.
Yeah, kind of. Because he wasn't able to play. So you've got Jake Brack stepping in there, and Maul Jaw is kind of your backup big. So a little bit smaller. You don't quite have the rim protection, but it's going to be tough to score with those guys. And they beat OSA Lindbergh in the championship game, and I thought Lindbergh played pretty well. They competed.
I think they maximized.
There just wasn't a lot they could do to stop some of this stuff offensively. Some of the buckets that Adidas was getting, just because those guys are that good. Josiah had 23, 5 assists, 5 boards. I think the three we mentioned, all double digits.
The key little poke away that Josiah had, he's just kind of timely with his hands and the passing lane, and you allow that team. So that's kind of the thing, right? And this is the way that I think about, not to go back to the Suns, but people wonder, hey, how can we do this for Middleton, or how can we do this, and worry about Drew Holiday handling the ball more. You know what? You play better defense on the front end, you get easier buckets, right? Much like with the 16s, if they do their work early on the defensive end, you don't have to worry about so much defending the post or needing a rim protector, because they have the ability to make it difficult on guards, on any ball handlers. They've got good wing defenders. They can pressure you in the backcourt, and then they get out and do what they do, and they can flat out score the rock.
And I think that the 15s, no team kind of exemplifies that quite like the 15s who won the championship. I didn't get to see that game because I was coaching at the same time, but they were really impressed. We talked about the game against Supreme in the showcase on Saturday. They're really impressive in that game. Had a few different guys playing well. I saw them play a few times. Stubblefield, Cooper, Mosser, different stretches, different guys stepped up, scored 15, 18 points.
I think for Coach Mitchell, they're giving up too many points. He always wants to do it on the defensive, and he never wants to give up 80. I mean, you play against some of these national caliber teams that they played against. You never want to see 80. Yeah. But at one point, there's 4 minutes and some change to play. They're up 16, and they've only given up 60 points.
Yeah.
And then you get some threes.
Yeah, Landon Pecorski got hot, hit some and ones. Elijah Gaith hit a couple of threes.
That's exactly what happened. And it's like, there's less than 3 or 4 minutes to go. You don't want to give up those buckets.
That's what happened the first time up in Lincoln, where they had
relaxed
control, and then Pecorski got hot. Jake Hilkeman made some big plays down the stretch, and they made the push and got all the way back in it.
They need to figure out, because I've obviously seen them a ton, right? That's supposed to be the matchup, whatever. They've got to figure out a way to utilize Hilkeman a little bit more. He's the one guy, in my opinion, that's a little bit different from the others. They found a way to neutralize Pecorski. They're going to force him to dribble. They'll pressure him. Eli, this was his first game healthy. Quan hasn't been as good of a shooter. Hilkeman is the guy that can deal them fits. And the other guy that I put in that discussion is the most improved, not the best, but the most improved that's in that Kevin Stubblefield discussion. Turner has gotten much better.
I was impressed with
Elliot
him.
Turner he kept them in it.
Oh, he was the one that, he got off to a great start. He was the only one going at the start of that game.
So here's my favorite thing about him, and I've said this about him we talked about him on our morning show. This goes back a couple of years, right? Because they're in the same age, obviously, as my kiddo. And again, his best attribute, he competes. Eldon Turner, he is fearless. He couldn't give one iota about what's going on around him. That guy competes.
And as small as he is.
The only guy that would get downhill.
I was going to say, as small as he is, he goes to the rim hard, and he's got really good body control, hits some tough shots with some contact. kind of crafty as a finisher, can shoot a little bit too, put the ball on the deck. So he's definitely, like you said, from where I saw him that first weekend up in Connecticut to that game, completely different player. And I think he got some really good experience in June playing with Bellevue West.
And I'm telling you, I'd let you say, just take Caleb, for instance, right? A guy that I think is a pretty good defender.
Yeah.
Let's just say that, right? I'm telling you, you ask him, he prefers to guard a guy like Landon Prikorsky than he does Turner. Turner deals him fits, even though Caleb is a quick, strong guard. Turner's a handful for him. It's like it's because he commits to doing it. He doesn't back down.
Yeah.
I was pretty impressed with him the whole weekend.
Yeah.
Now, he's still got to find a way to get it in neutral. Sometimes neutral's good for him.
Yeah.
He's usually in overdrive. But that can come, especially with a guy like Coach Woodard and that staff over there. And they'll figure that out.
Yeah. Playing at different speeds is something that doesn't necessarily come easily. It's kind of experience thing, continuing to improve type of thing that'll come.
You know what's interesting about that? Those guards that can do it, it's almost unstoppable.
Well, Josiah Dosler has kind of made that leap. That's when he took the leap to the next level.
Chris Paul mastered it. The ability to just change tempos, right? That's like, because you can't really, it's just hard to defend. When you can go by and you can kind of throttle it down, it just makes you different.
Yeah. That's kind of the three. OSA obviously swept the championships. The Kingdom Hoops Elite and All Iowa Attack and the Nebraska Supreme were kind of the showcase pool teams in the field this year. And Supreme wasn't in the bracket. They just played the two showcase games. So that was kind of the top tier competition. Then you had the Lincoln Supreme national teams. You had the OSA national teams. You had a few others, like the Nebraska United, formerly 402 Chaos. So it's some really good teams. I think the semis, quarterfinals, some of those were some really good matchups. I just want to shout out two guys in particular. The best, probably two performances I saw this weekend, outside of kind of Josh Dix against Supreme, was Alec Wilkins from Gretna. Playing for OSA National Crouch.
I agree.
He was unbelievable. I was on the bench for that game against Kingdom Hoops Elite, so that's their top team. He dropped 35 points on 15 of 20 shooting, 5 of 8 from 3, with 14 rebounds. Like, the 15-year-old, he just was unstoppable. And then Blake Sindelar from Howells Dodge, playing for the Norfolk D-League team.
Good call on your part.
Kingdom Hoops Navy, so their second team at the 17U level. He 26 points, I think, in the second half. Finished with 34. I kind of
liked a couple of those guys from D-League.
Yeah. Sindelar's a guy I've seen a few times. You cannot let him get in transition. He gets in the open court, it's over. You cannot stop him. And they played OSA Adidas.
Yeah, that's where I saw him.
And they only let him get in in transition a couple times. They were both buckets, but that's a key. But if he gets in the open field, it's over. And he was incredible in that game. They couldn't do anything to slow him down. 34 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 steals.
How about that stat line?
He's unbelievable. So those were probably the two single best performances I saw this weekend. But overall, it was a lot of fun to watch. I was glad to be there.
Yep, that's what makes him one of the best in the business. That's Jacob Padilla. I'm ODB. We still got Class B top 5-6 rankings coming up next week now. We'll recap what happens in Birmingham. We'll have a ton of fun. That's Jacob Padilla. I'm Damon Benning. Back next week with Nebraska Preps postgame.
A Hurrdat Media Production.